Yeah, I was just talking to Coach Iguano about the running backs and how maybe we haven't seen the full potential of Jaden Rashada as a runner. How do you feel that a dual threat quarterback really helps that running game?
Oh, I mean, I think it always adds to it. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it always adds to it. But I think what stresses out a defense even more is if, as long as, because a lot of quarterbacks don't get labeled as dual threat, but they can still pull it on you if they can see the read well. And I think every one of our QBs has the ability to hurt a defense when they pull it, when they're seeing it. So every one of these QBs that we have, and obviously Jaden coming in, has a chance to impact in the run game by being a viable option to pull it. And sometimes the guys who don't pull it as much pull it for the big plays or pull it for the touchdowns, believe it or not. But I also think just their movement, their ability to move and extend plays at times can be that even bigger than some of the things they might do in the in the read run game, so to speak.
And how do you think a guy like Drew Pine, who's been through a college system before, he knows how to go to work every day, how do you feel he's going to help that quarterback room really just kind of quickly get more acclimated, maybe even since it wasn't your offense or Kenny's offense, but just a collegiate level offense in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Drew's experience is big, just playing, but so is Trenton's. Trenton's experience is big, and both those guys jump out because they're the guys who have experienced the most college football. But that's not taking anything away from some of the other guys that are in that room, and what they can do, in terms of when they get their opportunity. So ultimately, sure, it'll be, you get a guy with experience and started a lot of football games. The great thing about those guys, so whether you're talking about Drew or Trenton or any of those guys, but especially speaking on the two that have the most experience, they're so humble. They're great teammates. And we had dinner last night, and it's like you wouldn't know from being around either of them. They believe they're the man, so to speak. They have the confidence, which you should, and they have that confidence, that swagger, but at the same time, they have that humility to always be ready to earn things, and they also have that leadership quality of bringing people together. So they bring each other together. So yes, I'm excited about that group as a whole and how some of the older guys or the little more veteran guys can rub off on other guys who maybe haven't gone through some of the rigors that they have.
Yeah, and that alpha mentality that you're kind of talking about with quarterbacks, but that willingness to be open and to bring other people in. If someone, God forbid, goes down and another quarterback has to step in, how does that really help just kind of keep things moving instead of being like, oh, wait, we got to figure out a whole new thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you can have a room where guys are always, they're ready, at the end of the day, because if you're not ready, that time's going to come and, you're not going to take advantage of that opportunity, So when you have a room, though, but when you have a starter or guys at that level and maybe someone else a backup or behind that, but everyone's willing to work on the same page, everyone's willing to, compete, but work together to get each other better every day, and to work like, hey, you guys should be working like you're the starter. And when that mentality exists in that room, then you're in a spot. And I know the next man up gets overused and all that, but there's a definite reality to putting yourself in that position to where, and I think some of those guys can also draw on that experience, because Drew's gone through some of that, Trenton's gone through some of that, where, hey, I wasn't the starter, but I had to be ready because you don't know. So those things and some of those leadership examples can help put our guys. But this is such a mature group of guys that I have in there, and such a competitive and also mature. They're going to attack everything. I can already see it, and I'm excited about it. They're going to attack everything like each one of them is the starter. They're going to take that approach.
And going off of that same kind of thing with offensive linemen, there's so many different traits you could talk about offensive linemen. I want to go more towards things that are outside of football that maybe contribute to their play. What did you see in this offensive line group that you brought in that really made it like, we got to bring these guys in?
Outside of football, you're talking about?
Football,
Yeah, it's a very good question, because it's funny. I know from the coaches from before, some of the returners, and in getting to hear kind of their approach and how much they believe in not only the football part of things, but the studying of it. So not just what you're doing on the field, but what you're doing off and studying it. And I had a number of those guys. So I'm going to start with the guys that were here at Arizona State that are returning. I had a lot of those guys reaching out to me. Hey, when can I get the playbook? When can I start looking? So they're hungry for that. So that's a part of it that's obviously huge, and especially at that position. People don't realize how sharp you have to be and how many moving parts there are on that offensive line, and what you have to do. But then when I went out recruiting and then brought in, not me, but when we went out recruiting and I was able to meet with some of these guys and truly visit with them, it was amazing how many scheme questions and how many football conversations we got into, not just what's the campus like or what's that. And that's, believe me, that's important when you get on your visit that. But they were driven toward, especially when you're a transfer, you've been out, you're past some of the recruiting part. You're past some of that stuff. They were driven truly towards, truly towards, okay, what are the schemes? What are you doing? Talking ball. And you could tell with these guys, it was a little bit different than some other recruiting, times I've been out recruiting and what conversations led down that road. So I'm excited about that.
And I know I always think of it like this, at least with linemen, where they kind of have to be 5 big dads protecting their 2 little kids in the backfield. As you guys have started to get on the field and see these guys, is there anything you notice about almost like a warmth and like protective sense that they have over their quarterbacks and their running backs or maybe even their tight ends, and just kind of that familial atmosphere?
Yeah, and in fairness, I haven't got to experience as much yet because we're, they're winter conditioning and they're, and they're kind of in their groups, less about being in their offensive groups. But I just mean not so much from an O-line, but I'm speaking program as a whole. You see that protection of one another as a whole, no doubt. You see a bunch of guys enjoying coming to work and coming to do things at a high level and hold each other accountable, but also be there to pick each other up if you're down. I mean, you see that with this group. I've listened to it, so that excites me a ton. So to say specifically O-line and the QBs, I 100% expect that with this group. And we'll probably see more of that as we start getting into true offensive stuff and ultimately spring ball opportunities.
And in football, offensively specifically, we talk about identity all the time. What do we want to be? How do we want other teams to perceive us? What do you perceive as being the identity for the 2023 Arizona State offense?
We'll be a pro-style offense that operates up-tempo. So we'll have a lot of elements of true pro style, how we train the quarterbacks, what we do, still getting into some run game, but we will still have the ability to be up-tempo, and we will be up-tempo. But we will create different versions of tempo, so it's exciting. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Thank
Really
you.
nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Coach,
Appreciate it.
a little late to the show.
All
My
good.
apologies if I ask you repeat questions, but
All good.
I heard you speak on Jaden and Drew. What's your evaluation of Jacob coming into the program?
Oh, I'm excited about Jacob. I got to watch, and I remember a little bit because, with Coach Iguano and recruiting him out of high school. So I'm excited about what he brings to the table, and I'm excited about his opportunity, to get out here in the spring and the skill set he brings, but on top of that, also the person that he is. He jumped out at me right away as being, he naturally connects with people. He has some natural leadership. He's obviously a winner, from where he came from. And so it's just, he just has been in a situation, maybe he hasn't gotten as many opportunities and to, in his prior situation, but he's more than, he's excited about it, and I'm excited about where he fits when he comes in here and to compete.
And Trenton, obviously, nursing an injury. How much do you know about that? How ready will he be for spring ball? Where is he at?
Yeah, it's hard for me to know for sure where he'll be. He definitely looked better. He's, so it was one of those things. But that's outside of my control. I'm not worried about that. He's going to be ready, whenever that time comes. And I'm excited once he is.
And Trenton being that veteran returner now, with all these new guys coming into the system, how much do you look at his past film when you're designing offensive schemes, or is it kind of a clean slate for him with years to come?
Well, I look at his past film, but it's less about necessarily looking at his past film designing. It's more about looking at his past film just to kind of see what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, what we need to work on, what I love about what he does, And then not just with Trenton, but with all the QBs, as you start to develop that room and someone earns the starting job, that's when you start to look at, building some things. Okay, I'm not gonna have him run this if he's not as comfortable with this concept, doesn't like that as much. But man, this is something he does well. And Trenton might be different than Drew that way, and Drew might be different than Jacob, and Jacob from Bennett, and down the line. So you have to, again, less about that right now, because the only reason you'd say that is if you've already, quote unquote, named a starter. And I wouldn't do that with any single player right now. That's not fair to any one of them. But absolutely, Trenton's earned the right to be, to go into spring exactly that. And then I get to keep seeing, just him compete with everybody else.
So, just keeping it simple, looking into the 2023 signing class, do you think that's a good building block heading into spring ball and then throughout the rest of the season?
Just our class itself?
The whole team.
The whole team, yeah. It's a great building block. So it's and just what we were able to do as far as bringing guys in that could be here early. That's a huge deal. I mean, we brought a lot of guys in that joined us, a couple weeks ago. So that is huge, because we were at a spot where, quite honestly, our numbers were low to really do what you want to be able to do in spring ball, because it's a 15 plays and 15 practices, and you have to have enough depth. So the job that this staff did, and led by Coach Dillingham, in putting together a group that could come in right away in January like we have, is going to allow us a better opportunity to grow through spring ball.
And then what's the identity you want to build with that offensive unit?
More than anything, we talked about it. We're going to be a no-huddle team, but a pro style. We'll play with a pro style at a no-huddle tempo, which is a little bit different than some of the spread no-huddle or true pro styles. So, and we will have elements of things we can do that some spreads don't do, and we'll have elements of things that we can do that some pro styles don't do. So I'm excited about that. But ultimately, the identity is we're going to work to play championship football. We're going to work to, again, and we're going to, there's going to be an aggressiveness to how we do things, but it's going to be still, with judgment, so it's well-timed aggression. But not to get too much into it, I'm excited about it, because at the end of the day, if I had to put one word, we're going to work to be a championship-level team. And those are the teams that do things the right way on and off the field, and a championship-level offense.